Welcome to the Human Needs Podcast. I'm Marcus Packard, here to dive into a critical discussion on how we can align humanity toward a shared goal. One that prevents human extinction by addressing the accelerating arms race. To achieve this, we must put an end to the constant trade-off between long-term collective well-being and short-term personal gain in our competition for jobs, clients, and resources. In this episode, I'm excited to share an interview with Patrick Knodel. Patrick is an incredible individual. It was fantastic to speak with him. It's rare to find someone as deeply committed as I am, not just to prosocial work as a job or for virtue signaling, but truly dedicated to making a real difference. What makes Patrick stand out is that he isn't confined by typical ideological groups. He has his own way of thinking, which allows him to clearly understand the challenges facing society today. Patrick runs a charitable foundation called ChanceMaker Foundation, which shares many of the same objectives as the Prosocialise Foundation. He also leads an impact investment business called Innovation for Impact. In many ways, we have a lot in common, which made this conversation especially engaging. What he's accomplishing with his organization is outstanding, and I highly recommend checking out the ChanceMaker Foundation's website in the link in the comments. Their projects are vast and incredibly impressive. Beyond his work, Patrick is extremely well-spoken and unafraid to speak directly and honestly, which is very refreshing. I truly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. Starting recording. Okay, so the recording is started. I don't like the idea is just for this to be a regular conversation, so for us to enjoy ourselves like we did last time, and we have the guidance there. I will set an intro to this afterwards, so that way we don't have to like do a really clear intro now. But how are you doing?
Fine, fine, but not great. Lots to do and a lot of crazy things going on in the world, and a lot to think about and what to focus on and what to try to let go. And yeah, that's the basic struggle, I guess, that people have these days who are a bit out there and who are trying to understand things rather than focusing on ignoring stuff that you don't like.
Yeah, I can relate. I actually, things are going well for me. Today, actually, right before this interview, I saw that we've got the public administration has given us a little grant, 57% of 10K to work on our platform on ShareBay to improve it, and possibly, we're supposed to make it into a communication protocol so that between platforms it's not just going to be like one site, like other platforms can use that protocol. But I'm not getting much sleep, and I'm quite stressed. But yeah, it's the life, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's great to be able to chat with someone who's in a similar endeavor. And it's really an honor. I want to thank you again for making time for this, because I know how time is scarce, and especially someone running so many things. I was looking at the questions that I had, and I realized that I don't have any in which you explain all the things that you're involved with, because it's really a lot. Like, so you run a nonprofit that has all these different activities. Like when I look at the webpage, it's really just astounding, all the different things that you're involved with. And then you also run an investment fund for sustainable investment, correct?
Yeah, impact. Well, it's not a fund. It's basically a small company, investment company where I invest in impact ventures, and it's difficult to. It doesn't really fit into these normal categories of fund and family office and business angel. it's somewhere in between. So basically, I have one company where I borrow the money, and then I take that and invest that into impact ventures. And I have to pay that money back after 10, 12, 14 years in 3 tranches, and have to pay some interest to the company where I borrow it from. So basically, it's an impact fund with one LP, if you want to put it this way. Yeah.
Wow, that's something. Yeah, it's got to be a lot of pressure and a lot of work.
Yeah, that's basically a bit the problem at the moment, that I'm doing these, like if you go to LinkedIn, I have officially the 2 jobs, like the investment part and the charitable foundation that you already mentioned, which is it's called ChanceMaker Foundation, and it's focused on finding people with a focus on the global south, but not only. We call them chance makers because they are people who actually have lived through problems and try to solve them by innovative solutions. So we have like 17 to 20 partners in the foundation. In the investment company, I have at the moment 17 investments, of which 3 are funds. The rest is direct deals. And so it's a lot of work because there are similarities between the 2. I mean, one is non-profit, the other is for profit, so that's the main difference. But the similarity is that both focus on young and innovative organizations, which means that the founders of these organizations, they have basically the same problems. They are running for money all the time, which is why they are not focused enough on what they actually do. So that's what we are trying to do in both terms, provide some stability and empower them to actually also grow as an organization, because there is still this, from my point of view, crazy attitude when it comes to donations, that no money should be used for overhead costs, and everything should go into projects. Well, that's how we are all educated, and I can see why that is, because those huge organizations, like, I don't want to call out names here, but the big ones that we all can find when you use Google. I mean, yes, I also would not donate money for them to pay their huge, crazy overheads. But the real impact-driven organizations that are really small, I mean, the best thing you can do there is fund their overhead, because in the end, someone has to do the work. And people always think like, okay, well, we gave them 3,000 euros for a project for 2 years. I mean, they also have to live and pay their rent. And it's this crazy belief that everything that is good and does impact should be for free, and basically everything that, let me put it straight, fucks up the world earns a lot of money. And that's part of the behavioral change that we have to do. And so as a foundation, we are trying to give unrestricted funding. So they basically, I say, okay, you're the expert on the topic that you want to solve. I don't know how best to do an education program in Mali. So, but Yannick, you live there, you know it. So do it, yeah. And we talk about outcomes, about targets, about structures, about, are we on the wrong way? Do we have to adjust? We discuss all of that and we challenge all of that. But you call the shots. And if you say, I need 2 more persons to do that, then please take the money and employ 2 more persons. And if you say, no, I don't need 2 more persons, but I need another server to run my app, then please buy a server. So, and that's not mine to call the shot. And so that's basically what we do. We empower them over the long term and give them unrestricted funding. And that's basically, at the moment, it's an absolute, I wouldn't say unique. There are other foundations or donors who do the same, but it's very, very rare. Most donations and also state-funded grant programs, they just give 1-year grants. They give project-related grants where you have like 5% overhead costs included or something, where you cannot even pay the working student from that. and that's totally nuts. So that's basically foundation and investment. That's the two official jobs I have. And apart from that, I guess that's what you're referring to. I do a lot of stuff on a lot of articles on LinkedIn on diverse topics. I give some keynotes and panels. Sometimes I go to podcasts, as here today. So that's. I also travel around and try to visit our chance makers around the world, because in the end, I'm a dude from Germany. I have seen a lot in the world. I can ask good questions, but you have to understand the local context. And if you've never been to a country and never seen the communities where this project or whatever happens, it's really, really hard to understand and ask the right questions. So from my point of view, you have to look things also on a personal level. Just reading reports and doing video calls is good, but in my opinion, it's not enough.
Yeah, and that must be an interesting experience when you go to these places, because on one hand, it's great to get out of the office and travel. On the other hand, you are visiting a difficult situation in some of these, especially, right? And you see people in going through hard times. So it's got to be complex, that experience.
I agree. For me, on the one hand, it's good to do that, because then you actually see again why you are doing it. Because in the end, you are sitting most of the time in Germany and look to a TV, to a computer screen and have a phone, and you discuss these things. But when you're there and you see what you're doing it for, every once in a while, I need that also as a push again, because sometimes my problem is I tend to look at the big picture all the time, and the big picture is absolutely getting worse. Although there are many people saying the opposite, but it's absolutely not true. And so sometimes going into detail and seeing that specific problem in that part of the world where you say, okay, this is where we're actually trying to make a difference, and then that it's also a motivational thing. But it's crazy. I mean, I always have this thing. It's all the time. It's the same. So then I give you an example. Like if you fly to Mumbai, for example, the airport in Mumbai is basically today is in the city, but you can drive for 2 hours in Mumbai and you're still in Mumbai. So it's absolutely nuts how big this city is. Wow. And the airport has been built outside the city, but the city grew so much. Now it's basically in the middle of the city.
They're all like,
the airport is surrounded by slums.
So they're all small buildings, right? The city is basically all these small buildings that have been expanding and expanding. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so you have like slums, of course, around the airport, because no rich person wants to live where the plane goes 100 meters above your head, with no limits at nighttime, I think. And so you're flying in there and you see that from above, and you're like, okay, it's this realization. If I was born there, I would basically be there. There's no chance I would do what I would be doing now. You can say, okay, I have a good heart and I'm interested, and I'm maybe in some aspects I'm different from some other people. But if I was born there, I was there. That's it. That's the only.
Absolutely.
It's just lottery of life. I was born in the right place at the right time. And this reflection, and then I land there, and then I'm there for a few days, meet the people, try to understand what's going on. And then in the end, I jump on a plane and leave again and look down and say, bye guys, you stay there forever, probably. Yeah. I can just go. Yeah. And this understanding, and then you fly home, and I land in Stuttgart, and I take the local train, which is called S-Bahn, and then I go here, and then every time I walk up the stairs from the train station and I look into the street where I live, like Stuttgart downtown, as of today, everything nice. And you come out and it's just, okay, now I'm in a different world again. And every time that freaks me out, every single time for the past 8 years.
Do you think that has to do with, that's like one of the reasons why you are inclined to do this work? Because I had an experience, for instance, years ago, when I was on another job, I went to the Dominican Republic, and I was walking in the street, and I went to a restaurant there. It was like the only one that seemed decent at that town, and I ordered a fruit mix, a fruit like a drink, and I was walking down the street drinking my fruit drink, and I remember there was someone that was like bones, skin and bones, literally, and in the street, and he was asking for 1 peso, 1 peso, which is less than it's like nothing, right? And I was like, when you get into these situations, right? You're like, how do I protect myself from being completely, given away to all these, to how do I protect myself from not being dissolved by this inequality, right? It's like, it's so huge. I didn't give him anything because that was my protection back then. I was like, okay, then no, I don't give anything. I work on other things. I was already concerned, and I already was wanting to find a way to shift society, but it was still very theoretical. And but then after that experience, it's like written down in my brain, like just how that person probably perceived me, right? Like I was just slurping on a drink, and I didn't give him even 1 peso. Like that was like nothing, and that kind of keeps me wanting to do more. But one thing I find curious is that a lot of people go through those situations. Like a lot of people go through that experience that you went through, that you go through when you go to Mumbai, and they're on a business trip, and they like it seems like a lot of them are not being affected by that. Or do you think most people that do travel to these places are the ones that are most sensitive?
I would say traveling is not traveling. Like when I started doing what I do, I mean, I studied business. I had a very, I would say, classical, I would say, with looking back as of today, I would say neoclassical a mindset, because that's what you get taught in school and in university. And when I started traveling the world after finishing my studies, I was traveling with a backpack. So you sleep in the Jeep hostel, and you take the local transport, and okay, you have a rental car, but you going all these places. You get to interact with people over a longer time. Of course, I have never lived in any of those places, but it gives you another sense if you actually travel the whole country. I think many people who travel for pleasure to let's call it poorer countries, they fly to the airport, then they take the bus or the cab to a nice hotel, or they fly to an island. I know people who have been to Malaysia who told me that it's such a great country and it's so beautiful.
Right. So you think that they usually don't see these slums. They don't get close to them.
Maybe if you fly, depending on where you go, like in the example of Mumbai, when you fly in, you see it. When you go to Cape Town or to Rio, when you drive in from the airport, you go through the favelas and through the townships next to the highway, you see it. But then you, for example, in Rio de Janeiro, then you drive through the tunnel, and then you're at Copacabana, and there are only five-star hotels. So
right.
I think many people are like, oh wow, that's bad. But then they are 2 weeks at Copacabana in their hotel, and then they fly home, and then they say, well, I saw that. That's really bad. Well, the world is just not fair. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. And I think it's a matter of, I think our societies, the way we live and the way we do education and the way we tell stories and frame success and that we like the whole developed countries stuff, like we are more developed because we are destroying the world in record time, because we extract everything from it on behalf of others, and it's absolutely crazy, but we call that developed. And like this mindset, people are so trained to not, they have such a fixed worldview, and part of that fixed worldview is that, okay, I'm German, I'm American, I'm British, we are just industrialized because we are, in the end, we are more clever than
Right.
some guy from Africa. We work harder, and that's why we are richer. That's the everybody knows that that's bullshit. But in the subconscious mind, that's how we are programmed. And so it's part of the story is that it's just the way it is, and I cannot do anything about it. And I think this is how many people approach the world if they travel. And then I also have to say, I don't know about, you're American, right?
Yes.
I once, I don't know if that's true. I have no idea. I'm just quoting it. I once read an article that said that between 50 or 60% of Americans have actually never left their country.
It's a big country.
It's a big country. You can do a lot of stuff inside America.
Yeah. So within the US, within the US, like traveling from one state to another is kind of what traveling is. Like they'll talk about being,
So of course you have no understanding of the world whatsoever, because
people think Spain is in South America.
Exactly. So, and I mean, the US is maybe the most extreme example for that. Germans travel a lot. Dutch people travel a lot. That's when you travel, you meet Germans like I don't know why that is. It's a matter of fact. But still, even a country like Germany, where people really travel a lot, many people would never go to those places. They would never. They would also not go to the 4-star hotel in whatever. They would go to Greece and Italy and Spain, and there's a lot of beautiful places in Europe. So I think my general answer would be many people spend a lot of time avoiding uncomfortable truths, and they avoid it by not looking at the news that they don't like. They are avoiding it by not traveling to a country where their worldview might be challenged. They just avoid stuff to feel safe. That's what many people do.
And what do you think makes some of us actually face the challenge and the hard reality? Because I think it's like it's always a mystery to me, and it seems like there's a, like it's a thing of like, I mean, it's like a thing of inner strength, right? It's somehow you have the courage to do that, and I wonder how can we teach that courage to people, or like maybe it's the fact that they feel unstable themselves. Like that's one of the things. So yesterday, actually, I was on a panel about AI, and with someone from the Council of Europe, and my point was that instead of talking about human rights, we need to talk about human needs. And I believe that it may have, like, maybe it's that, maybe there are emotional needs that are not being met. Like a lot of people don't have their emotional needs met, and so they're in a state of insecurity, and so they're constantly trying to find that security somehow by blocking out all these things. Maybe what do you think?
I agree. I think the whole thing about psychology, about the trauma that we grew up with, the point of living in disconnected societies where you don't have the intergenerational household anymore, where the grandpa takes care of the grandchildren when the dad has to go to work. All of that is gone in industrialized countries, and that provided some safety. Yeah, you knew your family is there for you. When you grow old, your family is there for you. When you get sick, not even the family, the village is there for you, because it's a community and they take care of each other. We don't have that anymore. We individualized everything, and we say, okay, you're responsible for yourself.
And commodified it.
Yeah, it commodified it, yes. And also here, the US is the most extreme example for that, where you don't have any social security standards. And I think so people are involved with themselves, and they're struggling with themselves, and they cannot bear the bad of the rest of the world. And to be honest, I can relate. I mean, also for me, it's tough. And now when I think, okay, if I had 3 children, maybe a household with only one income that's not very high, you're, I don't know, migrant background or whatever, where would you find the time to deal with all of that? And then you have it's crazy. And then if you have the what's interesting, if you have the high paid jobs like the double income no kids or double income one kid and nice job at a big corporate where you earn 140,000 K a year or whatever, I think at a certain point people get into that automated ladder where you just, if you earn more, you increase your living standard, so you need to earn more, so you increase your living standard.
Yeah.
And you don't realize at one point, then you ask them like, how about giving 5,000 euros a year to a charity? I mean, you earn 150K, so. And they're like, well, I don't have the money. I don't have any free
I'm in
money.
debt, right? They're like, I'm in debt.
I'm in debt, yeah, because I bought so much stuff. And I'm like, okay, don't you realize that something is wrong here in your approach and then doesn't lead? But with many people, you cannot even have the conversation. That's just a general problem that we have created as a society.
Yeah, it's like a momentum, right? It's a momentum that people get into. Like Aristotle said that humans are animals of habit, right? And so once you get into that habit of just running on that wheel and growing and spending, it's really hard to stop that. Yeah.
And it's incentivized all the time.
And it's incentivized. Yeah. It's incentivized by people's peers, which is an interesting one of the like human needs is connection, right? So when all our peers are doing that as well, you know, how do we break out of that? We have to find different peers but different peers will have a job that is completely different. And so unless we stuck with our neighbors, like the friends of our neighbor, like, or we went to public school and we kept those friends of when we were kids, it's kind of hard to have peers that show us different ways of living and don't put that pressure on us.
That's exactly the point. That's my. If I would give one analysis why the way it is, how it is, it's the you call it peer, I would call it bubble. Everybody's living in their bubble. Also, the people who are trying to change the world and who have a certain worldview are living in their bubble. And I think that's actually one thing where I would say where I'm really, really different than 99% of other people, is not because I think that I'm much more clever or whatever, but I'm exposing myself to incredibly diverse people and bubbles all the time. And every time I do it, I see that they're all stuck in their bubbles. But the ones who think they're innovative, they don't think that they're in the bubble because they think they're innovative and the others just don't get them. So the arrogance bubble is also a bubble. And of course, then we have the media who's targeting special groups. Like if you can read the most fancy German news magazine that will sell you the next necessary war with a very sophisticated speech, and you can read the yellow press in Germany for the normal worker, and they will sell the same necessity for the next war, just using different words. They're all selling the same framing and the same story. They're just adapting their speech towards their target groups. And then you have social media on top of that, who even put that up a notch, where you can close the bubble even more. And AI will be the end of it all. I mean, then how we get out of there? If we really want to change the world, we have to break the bubbles. And either we have to get to an understanding where really people are actually open to go out and understand, or we have to get back to a community-based lives like 10,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, where it just didn't matter what happened in China or in the US, because my life was in my village and the place around it, and there was no climate change and biodiversity loss, so I didn't have to care what someone else 1,000 kilometers away does. But I don't see us going back to that place without a huge catastrophe that would bring us back. But I think that's what we all want to avoid. So the only way is we have to find a way to take away the fear of people to just open their eyes, crack their bubble, get outside of their peer group. So I think everyone who also does events and stuff and brings people together from different areas, I think that's one of the most valuable things you can do.
Yeah, that's kind of, so the work that the objective that I'm working on of raising awareness about shared human needs, that also is working on that as well, as in a way, because it's showing how we all are basically very, very much alike in what matters. And I think that can really help bring us together. How do you like go from bubble to bubble? You have like, the bubbles, are they like in your, like in real life, in like where you live, that you have like, you go to the pub and you get to know people there, all sorts of different people, and then you go to the some other like a conference, a congress, and so you get to know a whole other class of people there?
I think it's a lot of business related with me, because I mean, your friend circle, I mean, of course, most of my closest friends, I mean, that's just human nature. You meet people when you're a child or youth, or maybe when you study, and you have a long-term relationship, and that those people will become your closest friends. It's very tough to get as close with someone when you're 40 as with the guy you have been knowing since you were 10. So that's also a challenge. Like you develop in a different field, and maybe the other person didn't develop in that way. So is there still enough connection for that friendship, or do you say because you got stuck in your worldview, it doesn't fit anymore? So I think in my private life, I found new friends over the past years as well, where that live somewhere else, and that I try to meet every once in a while, and where I know the conversation is different than with people I have here where I live. And so maybe they are not as close friends as the other ones, but they give you a different perspective. So I actually try to do that on a personal level, but much more than that, that's also because of what I do. Like those people I wouldn't have met if I would work in a bank in Stuttgart. I would have never met these people. So that's because I do what I do, and that's because if I hear something interesting, I go there. If someone tells me about some conference that is completely, I go there. And so in terms of business, I have like, it's very international. One day I'm at a family office conference, and then you see, okay, basically rich people are still about how can I maximize my return on invest without paying a tax. That's still the main shit. Like, you give a keynote and tell how the world is going down and what you could do, and they say, oh yeah, you're a nice guy. And then 15 seconds, I love what you do. And then 15 seconds later, like, okay, here's this fund, and it's Luxembourg, and it's tax-free, and it's doing AI, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? And so and then you go from there to Berlin, and you go to the like, okay, it's all about climate change and whatever, a bubble, and they think like everybody has understood this, and I'm like, have you ever talked to these people? Like, the people in this room, they all have the same worldview, they all have the same geopolitical, very Western narrated worldview. You're not questioning any militarism, you are not questioning geopolitics, you're not questioning any of that. You just say, okay, people should not drive SUVs, and then that would save the climate. Like, guys, where are you living? And then you have like normal people who are just doing normal jobs, and one is a bit more left and the other one is a bit more right, but in general they're trying to cope with life. And one says, okay, I'm open to more change, and I know that we have to live a bit more sustainable, and others say, don't go on my nerves with that. And then you have people also from within my family who are rather at the bottom of the income pyramid, and live in the countryside and vote for right-wing parties. And if you talk to them, like those groups, it's like they live on completely different planets. And if I would like take these 5 groups and just put a name on it and do 2 or 3 examples of persons, And I would go to all of those 5 groups and say, who of you has talked in the past 2 years, a conversation, not like, okay, hello, I would like to buy a pretzel. Like, who had a conversation with one of those groups? 90% would say I had none, but they would all say, I know what these guys are thinking.
Right.
And this is so absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you why I am doing this. It just happened. Maybe it's because I had a very interesting background when I grew up where also within a certain bubble, it was very different from the things that I received when I grew up. And so maybe I was from the beginning a bit more open and a bit more exposed to opposite things happening around me. So maybe I didn't learn that fear of something new so much as others. So I don't think it's.
Yeah, that could be.
I think it's by coincidence that I have become this way. It's not something to be proud of. I think it's just happened.
Right. I think so. I can relate because I believe that the reason why I have a different view of the world is largely because I've lived in like 3 different countries throughout. I was grown, I was born in the US, and then I lived for a year here in Catalonia, then I lived in Canada, and then I lived back in the US, and then I lived back here, and so in different types of communities as well. And I think that probably has a lot to do with it. One of the things I was thinking about, another way that people can learn about other people like that. So there's a really cool documentary. I hadn't remembered it for a while, but I saw someone sharing it in a group yesterday called Human. Have you ever seen it?
I don't think so.
It is one of my favorite documentaries, and it's simply just interviews with all sorts of different people with a Black background, and all sorts of different people of all over the world. And they in the first, I think there's like three parts to it. I think each part is about an hour and a half or something. And in the first one, so what is love to you? And the second one is what is death to you? And I forget what the other one was, but they asked us these basic, simple questions, and these people open up and explain their lives. And it really is fascinating how you get to see, right? I think content like that can also help because getting people to have a conversation with someone, I think can be more challenging to break their bubble that way, because it's a lot of work. At least, I had to work on it personally. It's something that because I was motivated for this work of changing society, I kind of made an effort to learn how to have conversations with people. Yeah. So I think quality content can really help.
Yeah. The safe space to consume it. I remember when I became vegetarian, and then I'm not vegan, but I don't eat a lot of cheese and eggs. And for example, those Netflix documentaries, not everything is great in there, but in generally, like, there are some who give a nice overview that maybe like eating a cow every day doesn't really make sense for your health, and not for the planet, and not for the rainforest. And it was interesting when I became vegetarian and people realized I wasn't like forcing the talks about on people, but the people who ate meat, especially men, always started the talk on me in front of other people, like all the time. That's like every vegan and every vegetarian can relate to that story. It's like the other people force you to talk about it, then you answer, and then afterwards they say, well, these vegans and vegetarians, they always talk about why they are better. And you're like, no, you asked me. But then they ask and you give the answer, and they don't want to hear the answer, and they don't have a good argument against, so they're just annoyed. And so at one point I just said, guys, if you want to discuss this, it's not a discussion of a minute. It takes some time. if do you want to do that? If not, well, I will send you some links afterwards in WhatsApp, and you can just watch a documentary or whatever. And those documentaries changed many people because.
Oh,
and
really?
I think, yes, I know many stories, and I think it's because they're in a safe space. They're at home. They are not judged. They are not judged in front of other people.
Right.
They're not exposed, not knowing something. They can just watch it and think, okay, well, there might be something to it. I didn't know that. They don't have to admit it in front of other people, so they don't lose their face. And I think so that consuming information in a provided in a good manner, in a safe space, I think is a major game changer, because nobody wants to be exposed in front of 15 people that he doesn't know shit about something.
Right.
Nobody does that.
That's a good point. Yeah, documentaries, like I think I mentioned in the last conversation we had that I saw a documentary one night, and it just completely changed everything. And like I've been super focused on, like, I basically quit my job and decided to put everything I have, all my time, all my resources in this objective. And it was, it was just a documentary I saw on YouTube, and it just really reached me. Yeah. Yeah. Zeitgeist Addendum is what it's called. And, yeah. So I would also like to know, like, when I started the nonprofit, it was really challenging for me, and I didn't have any examples to follow. It's funny because, like, when you start a business, there are all sorts of, like, help and guides, and, like, you can go to the Chamber of Commerce and they will, like, kind of give you resources to help you start a business and stuff like that. But maybe I didn't see them or didn't know of them, but I felt like there was no help to start a nonprofit. How was it for you?
I think it depends on the country a bit. I think in Germany there is some help. There are institutions you can go to. Depends on what you want to do. Foundation is more difficult than, I don't know, a club or whatever. They're different legal entities. But yeah, in the end, I spent the first 10 months running around talking to people from foundations, from NGOs, from big ones, from small ones. There are impact consultancies. I went there, asked them. So it was just a long way of asking around, going to events, meeting people, and trying to get as much input as possible, because our foundation, like, has a very systemic approach. So in Germany, you have to. It's also crazy if you think about it. The definition of what is charitable, so non-profit, which means tax-free, is given in the tax law in Germany. So tax law defines what's good for humanity, which is absolutely insane. And of course, those definitions are very narrow and very strange. So you wouldn't find social business in there or whatever. And so I said, okay, I'm a new guy. I don't know. I have seen a lot of problems in the world. I don't know necessarily how to solve them. So I want to learn and then fund and do just what's best and what works. Like, that's what you would do if you founded a startup. That's what you would do. You had an idea, and then you would learn and you would adapt, at least if you want to be successful.
An experiment.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do also with the foundation, but that's not how it works. It's like a foundation in Germany that comes from 140 years ago. It's like there is a will of the founder, and you write that down, and that is to be done for eternity. Like, absolutely insane in a world that changes rapidly and you have to adapt all the time. But many foundations say, we get the point. We would like to fund that, but because of our articles of association, we cannot do that, and we cannot change that. So I spend a lot of time running around learning. Then I try to just put everything in my articles of association so that I'm actually able to find something for everything that I would do, which of course the bureaucracy, the administration in Germany didn't like. So it took me actually 10 months to get the stamp to actually have the foundation. So within those 10 months, you cannot open a bank account because you
Right.
need it for that. You cannot fund anyone. You cannot do anything. So all you can do is just run around and learn. So I did that. I did that for a long time, and then it was just like evolving, getting to know more people, and then it's in the end it's on yourself whether you stay curious or whether with the first answer that you like you just stay there and say, okay, I'll do it this way as well. There were some places where I could go, also official places that gave me some advice. Yeah, but in the end, it's learning by doing on your own. I would agree with you.
Mm-hmm. And so basically, people that you met at these congresses, right, at these conferences, that's where you got all the inspiration and the general support or the help or the guidance.
The first events I went at that time, yeah, I didn't have all those invitations that I get today. At that time, it was like, okay, there is a community of German foundations, for example, and they do an event every year. And of course, they have a new foundation, so you go there, and it was so disappointing. It was so crazy. I was like, I never forget that. I was like 3 days I was there, and after that I was on the train to Stuttgart 6 hours, and I was sitting there for 6 hours just thinking, what the fuck just happened?
Why is that? What it was?
Yeah, maybe I was naive. You know, I came from the for-profit sector, and I came from the let's all earn money and just go for it. And I thought like, okay, if I'm changing sides now and go to the non-profit, like that's where everybody wants to save the world, and I go there and everybody has this green Jedi sword and just wants to fight the dark side. and essentially it's that the power dynamics are as fucked up as they are in the for-profit world. Like the people who have the money decide which music is being played. It's the big problem of philanthropy in general. And that was the first time where I realized that then you have the panel discussions, and I don't know, 60% of the panels were used by people from big foundations who paid for the whole event, and was so non-innovative. And then you had all those banks and all those investment companies there who are just targeting the endowment of the foundation to maximize their, which is no impact at all, just maximizing for returns. And there was just, in 3 days, I mean, I met good people there. That's not the point. There were good people, but in general, the setting, I had the expectation that it's really a lot of content, and I'm new. I don't know anything. You guys have been doing this for 20 years. I will learn so much new stuff and get inspired, and it was just nothing. And that was really frustrating. And so I quickly realized that this world also is like very conservative, and there is no risk taking, and it changes now. Also, there are young foundations also from younger people and so on, and they try to do it different. But the big ones, like, I was like, okay, this will not be your peer group where you will save the world with, because they wanna look good, they want to have a nice event, they want to have a good wine and an easy life, and to the outside it looks good. So it was really frustrating. And so from there I just like, okay, this is not the peer group. So I go to the next one and the next one, and then I came to impact investing and to social business, and then things mix, and then it got more interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. It kind of reminds me of what you were mentioning earlier, and which how all the people that are working on something, like people that are working on trying to improve society, all of us, right? There's this divide where we have two jobs, basically. We have the job of actually doing the work, and then we have the job of finding the funding. So it's twice as hard as running a company. And I think a lot of people in the business sector don't realize that. They kind of, it's funny because sometimes they look down on nonprofits as if we were leeching, right? And we're just trying to like get a free pass and get free money when it's like twice as hard for us. It's really, yeah. So how do you manage, like, so how do you focus on getting funding? Because there are different ways. Like, so for instance, us, we have a bit of like members. We're trying to get more members, very few so far, but still. But I have like a stream of small income, and then we're working with grants. We're trying to get grants, but the thing with grants now is that like they'll pay for 60% of the project. So we still need to get that other 40%, which is significant, right? So and then so then the other thing is just finding donors, right? I mean, but that's like then when we put on the suit and we go to these like fancy dinners, right? And it's like, wait, what am I doing here? This is not. It's kind of there's an inner conflict there, I find, all the time.
I can't give you too much answers on that one, because like the foundation from the beginning was funded by one big funder where I had a contract. I still have a contract with. We are trying to widen our funder base for the past 2 years. It's working okay, but I cannot completely give that answer, because fortunately for me, I wasn't in that position where I just start with an idea and have to find funding for everything, which is the normal case for most nonprofits. So I see that with the people we are fund, they are in that situation, and that's why I see, okay, I'm as a funder then via the foundation, I'm trying to behave differently and listen to them and listen to their needs, and not being top down and because I'm Patrick, I have the money, I know what to do. So but with regards to fundraising, very generally speaking, I would say that it's very much, it's depending on the country where you're at. You mentioned dinners. I mean, the US is these whole charity events, fundraising dinner, golf tournaments, whatever is the big shit. So like, that's not so much the case in Germany. There is, but it's developing, but it's not so much the case, especially when it comes to so-called development aid. It's a lot about it's still a lot about like sending letters to people's homes with people with kids who have a face that looks damaged, and then say, well, then that guy needs your help. It's still that I would never do that. So we are trying to establish a way where we are communicating with potential donors in a way that we say, okay, we are here for the bigger picture. I know it's hard to understand. I will try to break it down for you. I will try to give you examples. People want it concrete. They don't want the big picture. So we have to break it down. But in the end, I don't want pity money. I want people who understand that we in the so-called Western world are part of the problem. And it's not because we are rich and the others are poor, we give them money. It's because they are poor because we are rich. That's a fundamental difference. And I know not everyone will understand that, and not everyone will openly accept it, but that's basically what we are trying to do. We're trying to say, okay, we are trying to change the way we live here, and we're trying to empower people over there. And so we are not just selling kits, because that's what most NGOs do. They're actually selling kits, and it works. It's until today in Germany, it's the best running fundraising scheme. Like, there are NGOs, you can go to the website, you can actually say, okay, I want Africa, then Ethiopia, female or male, like when you buy a car, you can go to a generator, and then it gives you a kit, and then you say, okay, I want to fund this. Like, this is so disgusting. This is so everything that's wrong with this world is in that process. And so if I have to do that to get money, I don't do it. Then I do something else. So I'm very clear that a certain reflection and a certain interest in things is necessary, because otherwise we won't change anything in the world. And also our foundation alone with that euros won't change anything if people are not becoming part of the journey. And that's what we're trying to do. And maybe we have professionalized this over the past months. So please ask me again in 3 years how it's going. So far, I can say that there are people who are interested, and I'm pretty sure there are many, many who are not.
Yeah, well, as long as you have some people that are interested and to keep going. I mean, it's kind of, you have to look at the glass half full, right? That's what we do. Yeah, it's a challenge. It definitely is a challenge, and yeah. So I think we've kind of gone through all the questions. Let's see, what were the other questions? I had them here.
I think you had also some political stuff in there. And
okay, that's exactly what I was thinking of when you said that, because you're kind of doing the difficult way, right? You're not afraid to say what you think, even though you believe that most people are not going to agree with it or not going to really like it. And so that's admirable. And do you have like a system in which you evaluate how far you want to go, or do you just go all the way and you're just like sincerity 100%?
Yeah. Short answer, yes. I don't know. It's I have always been this way. I've always said what I told people what I think, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't like it, they don't like it. I think the biggest mistake in life that you can make, and many people do that, is making yourself dependent of getting positive feedback from other people. I mean, you have to have self-esteem, and you have to be okay with yourself, and you have to be able to look in the mirror when you go to bed. And I think many people are not able to look in the mirror when they go to bed, but they are very, very dependent on external feedback. And also here, I know some people will now listen and say, well, you are from a very privileged background with a white guy in Western Europe from a privileged family. You can do that, others cannot do that. Yes, agree. But most people with my background or other backgrounds also don't do it. So for me, that's like not, it doesn't devaluate that I do it, because many people find excuses why they cannot be open about stuff. And
yeah,
what really amazes
absolutely
me, what amazes me, and what terrifies me, because you said I say a lot of things also on LinkedIn and stuff that most people would not agree with. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, not necessarily not agree with, but that they'll find that
provocative,
that stir things up in them, and they may like, well, just like the other conversation that we had, like just mentioning that Israel is committing genocide, right? That is, even though it's been pretty much established, right, officially, that's what's going on. It's still kind of edgy to say it, and I find in situations where I'm kind of reluctant to say it as well. And
it's the best example though. So I get a lot of what terrifies me is that I get a lot of feedback from people when I meet people in person who I usually don't meet, or you have a video call or whatever, but you're like connected on LinkedIn or whatever. There are so many topics and so many people who have never liked any or commented any of those posts. And when I look at them from the outside and where they work and where they live and whatever, you would think, okay, I'm sure they don't agree with me because they're in this. And then they meet me and they're like, I'm so happy about reading this. I read your stuff all the time, and I'm just afraid to say it, but it's horrible. Like if it's US imperialism, if it's Israel's genocide, if it's a different view on the war in Ukraine, if it's like criticism of things like Bill Gates Foundation and the power dynamics they have, like I mean, you can have a list like this. It's like we are our opinions and our worldviews when we grow up in the Western world are framed by by the
Yeah.
US, they are framed by Hollywood, they are
Yep.
framed by the hero versus bad stories, or the US cop is the good guy, and the drug dealer from Mexico is the bad guy, and
Right.
the terrorist is Muslim, and the hero is a white dude from the CIA, and all of this nonsense, like, which has nothing to do with reality and with history. And
Yeah.
and I find it amazing that so many people, like, I very openly criticize the whole woke paradigm, because the woke paradigm for me is
Another example.
another
Yeah.
example. It's like, we had neoliberalism, so everybody said, okay, that crashes the world. So now we have left liberalism. What is left liberalism? Left liberalism is criticized by conservative people, or rather right-wing people, because they say, okay, current politics in Germany, for example, are too left, which is absolutely not true. It's not left at all. It's as far away from left as it gets. It's just framed as left liberalism, which is nothing else, which is neoliberalism in a new disguised form, because you say, okay, we are green
Right.
while doing the same exploitative crap. And in order to bring that to a population that wants to, because people want to feel good, the woke paradigm is perfect for that. So you can say, okay,
Right.
I'm
Gotcha.
reflecting on myself because I know I'm privileged because I'm a white man, and I don't know, I ride a bike instead of driving an SUV, and I post about women's rights all the time because that's important. Like, these very, very easy wins that you can transport to the outside, who are good. But when it goes to a deeper level, like on a systemic view, where I'm actually not part of the good side,
Yeah.
then I refuse completely. So I don't want to discuss the background of the Ukraine conflict and what happened over the past 40 years with regards to Russia and NATO. I just ignore that, and I say, okay, Putin is a horrible guy, and we have to fight him because he wants to invade Europe.
Right.
It's complete nonsense when you look at history, but it's very easy, and it's very common in my peer group. And so these things, that's very interesting to me, that most people also in that bubble, they are not really interested in digging deeper into systemic understanding. And why I'm, I think, more open about it is because my way into becoming a person who is more interested in, let's say, making things better on this world, I didn't start with biodiversity. I didn't start with social stuff. I started with geopolitics, and I started with media narratives. I started with looking at narratives, how wars are sold to the public over and over again, and how 10 years later it's always been crap, but then people are dead, and like, okay, we didn't know that time, but sorry, just killed a million people. Like, and when we do it in the West, when the US and the NATO is doing it, like, oh yeah, okay, Iraq, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. We killed 1.5 million kids. Okay, it's okay.
Right.
It's gone. Syria, Afghanistan, the whole Middle East, the whole Central America, South America, the whole coup d'etats.
Yeah, it's been going on for a century, right? We just
years, at least since World War II.
Yeah.
And people just don't know it. And if they know it, they're like, yeah, okay, but that's history.
Yeah.
But then we judge, like, if China or Russia or Iran or whatever does something, we judge it completely different. And this is so, and that the Israel conflict is, the Israel-Palestine, it's not a conflict, it's a genocide. There is an oppressor and there's a victim. I've been to Palestine myself. I've seen it. It's the most, I've seen slums and destruction all over the world. I haven't seen anything, not anything that comes close to this disgusting system that Israel is putting on Palestinians, not since October 7th, but for the past 50 or whatever years, 80 years. And people have no idea, absolutely no idea what's going on. And if you're German, like, you grew up with, okay, we are the bad guys, we did this terrible stuff 80 years ago, yes, sign. And so they said, we have to protect Jewish life. So that's the official narrative. I say, because we did that, we have to protect life. We have to make sure that people not get killed, that we don't do genocides, that we have equal rights, that we always protect the weakest ones, that we don't do victimization and blaming. But in Germany, it's like it's unsellable. And then you have like, okay, now I mean, your government and mine are supporting this, and you don't even. I think it's such a perfect example, because people always say then, okay, you're watching, I don't know, Hamas propaganda or whatever. It's the best example, because you don't even have to watch anything from a Palestinian account, because like Israeli soldiers, they are uploading their war crimes on their own social media accounts, and
Yeah,
they are
it's
celebrating it.
so.
You
Oh
can
my
watch.
gosh. Yeah.
The Israeli government, they are saying that their plan is to like wipe out Gaza and go to the West Bank, and like the minister, he says that either people go or we kill them. He says that on TV. You don't need Hamas propaganda.
Right.
The ICC now, I mean, they now warranted Netanyahu for war crimes officially. The ICC.
Yeah.
There is no discussion. You can see
Right,
it
exactly.
every day, and still people are like, yeah, but it's a very one-sided view, and it is just because they are so afraid, because everything inside them says, okay, if I say that out loud, people will hate me. I won't have access to whatever anymore. And maybe that's also the case for me. Yeah, maybe I limit my perspectives. Maybe I limit my potential funders. Maybe I limit my reach, because with that speech, I will not get invited to a popular mainstream talk show in German television. Whereas if I just said the other stuff, I maybe would. But in the end, I do this to change things, and I want to look in the mirror in the evening. And if I don't say that, I cannot look in the mirror. So I do it. But bottom line,
Congratulations.
If it ever gets
it's
too much,
admirable. It's very admirable. And I think that like you're a great public speaker, and I hope that people invite you more often to places such as podcasts, because you're really great at explaining all this in detail with examples, and I think that that's one of the most important things we can do. So even just that is like an enormous work that you're doing. Yeah. There was we had agreed for like till 2, but there is another question that I remember now that I wanted to ask. As you wish. Do you want to continue a little bit, or
we can go on for 10 minutes. So if you have another question, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay. So first of all, I mean, you're giving me a lot to think about, and that's why I'm kind of getting stuck on my words, because it's really deep, and it's making me reflect very much on my activity, because we share a lot of similitudes in our activity, but there's one thing. So what I'm doing is nowhere near the amount of stuff that you're contributing to. And one of the things that you're contributing to is the saving of slaves. Is that correct?
Well, that's an interesting topic. Actually, when I started the foundation, everybody knows that there are difficult like workplaces, and that there's a factory in Bangladesh where you create clothes, and that's very bad, and everybody has heard of that. But like when you talk about slavery, people always think about the classic trans-American slave trade from Africans to the US with some ships. That, by the way, that started earlier. It started within Africa, then it went from Africa to Europe, and only like the whole industrialization in England was a lot of slaves from Africa with cheap labor. Nobody's talking about that. That's also the basis for our development was also slavery, by the way, and exploitation. And you also have slave trading networks inside Africa between African nations, kingdoms whatsoever, who then were approached by Europeans to then bring the slaves from different places in Africa to the coast, and then from there, the white people took over and brought them to the US. So that whole system is also much more complex, and I didn't know about that. I went to Ghana 2 years ago and visited some of those places where people had been shipped, and it's like it's almost unbearable to go to do that tour. To be honest, it's absolutely crazy. Many Afro-Americans there as guests. Many. I think many of them want to come back and want to understand the roots of their families that had been traded. But what we are doing now, the funding we are doing, to come back to your question, is if you take the whole time, until, I don't know, 50 years ago or whatever, including the transatlantic slave trading to the US, and you're adding all the numbers up, then during all that time there have been less slaves in the world than we have today. Today there are different numbers between 40 and 60 million people who in fact live as slaves.
That's
60
crazy.
million, that's England. And
that's so crazy.
And the only question is, do you want to use the word? And then some people again say, well, you cannot call that slavery, but in fact it is. You have different stuff. You have bonded labor. You have a lot of stuff in prostitution and all of those things. But the main point is that it's always working on a quite similar methodology. So I'll give you an example. For example, from India. In India, you have many states that have been put together to be what we call India today. Again, from Europeans with borders that are not really there, same that we have in every conflict around the world. So you have, I think, 70 languages or something like that in India, and you have the caste system. So the lowest caste, they don't have much education, and they don't know any other languages than their own. So the way it works, for example, is someone needs a loan of, and it's really that less, it's $50. They go somewhere and the guy says, okay, I'll give you $50. And to pay me back, you work for 4 weeks in my brick factory, for example. They say, okay. So then they take him and his family many times. They put him on a train, bring him to a different state in India, different language where the guy doesn't understand anyone. Put him in a brick factory. Horrible working conditions, 16, 18-hour work days, just crappy food sleeping on the floor for 4 weeks. They work there for 4 weeks. Then they say, okay, now I fulfill my duties. I paid my money back. I want to go home. Then they say, yeah, but we sent you on a train, the train ticket was $50, and you have been sleeping here and eating here, so that was $30. So actually, you are now $60 in debt.
Wow.
And there are people who are born and raised on the base of a $50 loan that live in slavery in 4 generations. Born and died.
Yeah. Is there an organization that is tracking this?
Yes, there is. We have one partner that we work with. That's funny enough, the only American organization that we work with. So a little advertising here for them. They are called International Justice Mission. Headquarters is in Washington D.C. And what they are trying to do is basically they work in different countries and different systems, but very randomly explained on that example is, so you go in, you identify the problem. You free some people, you bring it to court, and you establish a court case, because most of the time it's the state or the politicians where it happens, they are denying that the problem exists, because officially slavery is banned in every state of the world.
Okay.
So it's not legal like in the US 200 years ago, it's banned everywhere. So they deny that the problem exists. So you bring it to court and you say, okay, we have this one court ruling now, so it exists. And then from that you go on. Then you find politicians who want to be aware, who want to know. Then you find a judge who wants to know. You find a lawyer, and you find policemen who want to be aware. Then you start working with them. You start educating them on the problem, how to find, how to provide opportunities for people where they can go, how to build trust in the state that they actually help them, because the state did never help them, so they will never go to the state to ask for help. And so by doing that, you're trying to bring the justice system of the state, you're trying to bring it to work for the poorest people, because justice systems usually never work for the poor. They only work for the rich. And
have you ever heard that saying? There's a saying that says criminal law is la ley, because I think I know it in Spanish. Civil law is to keep is for the rich to steal from the poor, and criminal law is to keep the poor from stealing from the rich.
That's I don't know the quote, but I would completely sign it. I just read a great book on that. I think it's called The Code of Capital, and it's about like how the whole how do you say that in English?
Jurisdiction? Wait.
Jurisdiction.
It's not the right word, I think.
Not the right word.
The whole judicial system.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. The whole judicial system is like based on law and from England, and how it developed in order to like protect the owners of the assets, like who owns the countryside and who owns the mansions. It's based on protecting them, and every part of law that we have until today, and the way we learn law and learn to execute law is basically to exactly do what you just said, to protect the rich and exploit the poor. So that the system itself is a huge problem. And but you can still work with the system, and there are remarkable results to that. So you can actually see that in some areas, when you did it over 5 to 10 years, then it actually starts working, and then people are freed not by this NGO, but by other NGOs or by themselves. And former slaves go together and build new formations. For example, they call it bonded laborers rescue associations. So then you have like people from the lowest caste with no education and no skills, who have lived as a slave. They then become educated. They learn to speak in front of other people, empower other people, go to their peer group, because they listen to them and they say, guys, if you know someone, tell me. I will actually get the state to help you. So then they build trust, and so the system starts to work in itself. And that's for me the perfect example of transformation, because the NGO is trying to build something that makes their own purpose unnecessary anymore. So they want to.
That's beautiful.
They want to abandon themselves, because the problem can be solved without their help, and that's a very core principle of good NGO work, I think.
Right. I think that should be the principle of all business, actually. So there's this thing I like to say. It's one of those kind of controversial things that I called back from saying it, but I used to say it a lot. I don't say it as much anymore. So there's this idea where business is about it makes money by solving a need, basically, by solving a need. And so the common good is when the need's already solved, right? So that the common good is also, the objective is to solve a need. But what happens is, if the needs are already solved, then there's no more business to be made. And so business often talks about opening markets or creating markets, and what they're trying to do is create, false needs. And so there's this conflict of where the common good is in conflict with business. And so I believe that the most ethical businesses are ones that are trying to actually no longer basically run out of business. That's what their objective should be, right? In a similar sense that you're saying.
True.
But it obviously in the long run, right? But
in the long run. Yeah, sure, in the long run. Yeah, but that's, I mean, that's, I mean, maybe that's a good, that's maybe a good final word. Like most businesses that are very, very valuable today in terms of dollars and euros, they don't solve any problem. In the opposite, they generate a problem to
Right.
keep people spinning in the hamster wheel in that problem. That accounts
Right.
for big tech, that accounts for big pharma, that accounts for big food. It's like all closed loop systems that you keep people sick by food, so you can keep curing them with some medication. You keep them depending on dopamine, so you can funnel them a new reel every few seconds. Someone told me, I don't know if it's true, that the average time on Instagram when you scroll your feed for one post is 0.3 seconds. So what does that to a society when the average time to consume information is 0.3 seconds? Like
Yeah.
but those are I mean, those areas that I just said, those are the most valuable companies in the world, maybe apart from
Yeah.
maybe some oil company, and the ones who are actually targeting a problem, like, I don't know, people are mentally ill, and we want to actually bring them back to be healthy, not to make them dependent on some medication for the next
Right.
50 years. They don't get funding, because then
Right.
they say, okay, that's social business, that's not scalable. We
Right.
cannot extract from it. And that's the way we define value as a society in terms of economics is the main problem that we have. And so I totally agree with you. A company should have a target and solve a problem, and if the problem is solved, okay, find a new problem. There
Find a new
enough.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been great. It's been great talking with you, Patrick. And thanks again. I invite everyone. Everyone should check out your website and consider contributing to what you're doing, because it really is amazing. And maybe we can have another talk like this next year or something, to see how things have progressed.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation, Marcus. I enjoyed the conversation, this one and the private one we had, and yeah, looking forward to it next time.
Me
Keep the
too.
work going, and don't give up, even if you're a small NGO and the financing is hard. I still believe that there are also good people there who have money, who want to change something. It's just sometimes hard to get in touch. But if you're there, I think there is a way, and please keep going what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I'm satisfied with the work that we're doing, and what we're achieving. So even if we don't have much funding, I believe we're having a significant impact on the world, and
Cool.
it's wonderful to be a part of that. So thank you very much again, and keep doing the work you're doing. It's really great. It's really wonderful.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Enjoy a shared world.